Once you've created an ASP.NET website, you can then add additional pages to the website. Each page is built as an HTML file with added elements and attributes that are processed by the ASP.NET application server at runtime. You place the code either in the page itself, or using an architecture sometimes known as code behind, you can place your scripting code in a separate file. I'll first show you how to create a dynamic page using the Visual Basic language. I'm working in the existing website, Hello World. From the Visual Web Developer menu, select Website, Add New Item. The contents of the Add New Item dialog box will differ depending on what sorts of components you have installed on your system. Regardless of what you have installed, though, you should minimally have the Web Form item. A web form is an ASP.NET page. When you select Web Form, notice that the name defaults to a file name with an extension of .aspx. In this first example, I'm going to create a file that uses the Visual Basic language. I'll name the file hellofromvb.aspx, and I'll select from the language list Visual Basic. Notice the option Place Code in Separate File is selected. Again, this results in placing your scripting code in a separate file that's linked into the HTML page itself. I'll click the Add button to create the file. This actually results in creating two files. The main file, hellofromvb.aspx, is open on the screen, and it's shown in the Solution Explorer where I'm pointing my cursor. When I click the tree icon, I'll see that there's a second file called hellofromvb.aspx.vb. And at the top of the file, in the page declaration, I'll show you that there's a code file attribute that refers to this VB file. The contents of the VB scripting file are incorporated into the page when it's requested from the server, or as it's compiled. Now, I'm going to open the VB file by double-clicking it in the Solution Explorer. When you declare a variable, which is a place to hold a dynamic value, in a page that uses Visual Basic, you place it inside the partial class declaration. And then, when you declare it, you use something called an access modifier that declares where that variable will be visible. I'll use an access modifier called protected. I'll type in the first few characters, PROT. I'll see a list of the available items that start with that string, and then I'll press the space bar. That auto-completes the keyword protected. Now I'm going to put in the name of the variable that I want to create. I'll simply call it var1. In Visual Basic, you then declare the data type, or the type of data the variable will hold, using the keyword as. I pressed the space bar, I typed the letters AS, and I see the as keyword displayed. Once again, I press the space bar to continue. Notice that Visual Web Developer automatically uppercases the word as it should be. And then I select the data type, which in this case will be string. I start typing the name of the identifier and then press the spacebar to autocomplete it. Finally, I'm going to assign this variable an initial value by adding the equal sign and then a string wrapped in double quotes of hello from VB. In Visual Basic, that's the complete statement. Once again, I've declared a variable named var1. I've set it as protected, which I'll explain in another video. And I've set its data type to string and its value to hello from VB. Now I'll press Ctrl S to save the file, and I'll go back to the web page that uses that code file. Now, to output that value in the page, I'll place the cursor between the div tags. Notice that the div tags are inside a form. All ASP.NET pages contain this form element by default, which allows the page to be submitted to the server. In order to output the variable, I'll use this code. I'll start with a less than character, then the % character. Notice that Visual Web Developer auto-completes that code and creates an ending token to match. And then I'll put in an equals operator, which means output a value. Then I'll start typing the name of my variable, var1, and notice that Visual Web Developer already knows the name of the variable. When I see it on the screen selected, I'll press the spacebar to auto-complete the code. I'll press delete once to clean up the code a little bit, and then Ctrl S. And notice that Visual Web Developer closes up the code and makes it nice and pretty. I've saved the file, and I'm ready to test it. I'll go to the menu and select Debug, Start Without Debugging, or press Ctrl F5. And when the page is loaded, it displays the dynamic value Hello from VB. Now I'll do the same thing in C#. I'll close the browser. Once again, I'll go to Website, Add New Item. I'll name this file Hello from C#, and I'll select that language, Visual C#, and click Add. I'm going to open up the ASPX file in the Solution Explorer panel, and then open its associated code file, which now has an extension of .cs. You'll see that a C# file is a complete class declaration marked only by this keyword, partial. I explain more about partial classes in the chapter on ASP.NET Architecture. For now, the one thing you need to know is that if you want to declare a variable and make it available to the page itself, you place it inside the class declaration, but above the page load function, which is called an event handler function. Now, I'll declare the same variable as before. In C#, the word protected has a lowercase p, and Visual Web Developer is helping me auto-complete the code as I go each time I press the space key. I put in the keyword protected, and next the data type, which is string. Now the variable name, which once again will be var1, I assign the initial value hello from C#. In C#, you end each statement with a semicolon, using a syntax that's very similar to Java, JavaScript, and C++. I'll save my changes, and then I'll go back to the ASPX or the page file from which this file is linked. And the code here will be exactly the same as in the Visual Basic example. I'll create a less than character and a %. Visual Web Developer automatically completes that much of the code. The equals operator to indicate that I want to output a value. And then once again, var1, the name of the variable. And then I'll run the page selecting Debug, Start Without Debugging. When the page loads, I see the dynamic value Hello from C# displayed on the page. So that's a look at how to create dynamic web pages using Visual Web Developer. Each page consists of the page itself plus a linked code file. You don't have to separate the code and the HTML markup into two separate files, but Visual Web Developer makes it very easy to do this if that's the architecture that you want to follow.